What's up, everybody? Welcome to Scene to Screen, a show about the basics of screenwriting. I'm your host, writer-director Cory Reeder. Each week, I gather a diverse panel of TV staff writers, showrunners, screenwriters, and producers currently working in the industry. We discuss the skills and craft of screenwriting while making sure that the conversation stays inclusive. So, if you've ever marched in the streets, made a sign protesting injustice, been discriminated against, or had to fight for basic human rights, this show is for you. And if you haven't had to do any of those things, congratulations. The show is for you too, because like it or not, storytelling and writing is inclusive and universal for all of us, at least for now. Who reads your stories? Well, that's a different subject. So, all right, moving on. She's the ASL machine who knows how to show the deaf what I mean. She is our ASL interpreter, Mona Jean. How are you, Mona Jean? Did I do okay? How are you? I'm trying. All right. Each week I have a sponsor that I pick for the show, and I try to make it positive, a little bit funny, and also poignant. But things have transpired over the past few weeks or decades that have transcended this pandemic quarantine. Injustice against basic humanity is front and center in the world, and the world is watching. So this week, my sponsor is Justice. All right. Look, I've been trying to make these panels timeless with the discussions. I'd love to think in 3, 5, or 10 years from now, new writers are going to be able to find these videos and become motivated to write their own stories that will entertain, teach, and connect all of us and provide us with some perspective. But without justice, the pillars of story get lost. There's no line between good and bad, hero and villain, right and wrong. So whether you're a person of color, a person with a disability, LGBTQ, or anyone that has suffered an injustice, may these times bind us together and lead humanity on a path back to sanity and justice. And with that, I'm done. Like Forrest Gump said, that's all I have to say about that. So, fade in. Episode 7, pitch please. Here we are. All that time you spent putting words on the page, and now it's time to try to turn that script into a full-blown production. All that hard work of honing ideas, getting organized, characters being developed, beats becoming acts, just so you could spit it all out in a vomit draft, and then draft after draft, you polished and honed using every note, tool, and willing reader at your disposal. You've hounded producers, managers, and agents to get your first pitch meeting. So it's time to show your work. A good pitch is more than sitting down with an executive and asking, so what'd you think of my script? It's so much more than that. And here to discuss how much more of that is our amazing panel. First up, let's please welcome Amani Walker.
Hi.
Hey, Amani, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am ecstatic to have you here.
Thank you.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a little timer up here. It's going to go for 60 seconds, and let's just hear who you are for 60 seconds. You ready?
I am ready.
Here we go.
Hi, my name is Amani Walker. I was born in Chicago, raised in LA. My mom is a self-taught pianist. My father is a multi-instrumentalist, and I have no musical, and I'm not musically inclined whatsoever at all. I am a drama writer. I am now with the quarantine, I can add school teacher to my resume. I'm homeschooling 2 children. And we're actually on a quarantine getaway because we just for the sake of our sanity. So I apologize in advance if they run by the screen. I did ask them to stay put. But I used to write comedies. Now I write dramas, and I'm having a great time with it. So that is who I am. I know I've got 14 seconds, but yeah, I'm done.
That's all good. That's all good. I'll bet your co-writers appreciate that sort of stuff because it just means you need less editing.
Absolutely. But I'm looking over my shoulder to make sure they stay put.
Oh, that's all good. It's all good. Welcome to the world of many parents who have had to take on the teaching mantle. So,
Yes.
all right. Coming up next is Sung Jin, but you can call him Sonny. Come on into the room.
Oh,
How you doing, Sonny?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Right on. Thanks for being here. I'm going to put 60 seconds on the clock and you just tell us who you are. All right.
Sure.
All right. On your mark, get set, go. Oh, there goes the phone.
Hi, I'm Sonny. I'm a Korean American writer. I've been writing for about 15 years. Right now, I'm a co-EP on a show called Undone on Amazon and a show called Dave on FX, and written for shows like Tuca and Birdie on Netflix, Silicon Valley on HBO, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia on FX. I spent most of my early career mimicking others, both as a writer and human, but then I had a complete breakdown 6 years ago, which was actually my breakthrough. And my intention of my work has since been to help clean the doors of perception. And now I'm working with people like Jaden Smith, Kanye West, Stephen Yeun, Daniel Kaluuya, Hiro Murai, and Lakeith Stanfield, amongst a couple other projects. So I'm happy to be here.
Wow. That's amazing. We're lucky to have you. Thanks. Let's see. Up next is Kourtney Richard. Come on into the room, Kourtney.
Hey. Hi, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. How are you?
Amazing. I'm going to give you 60 seconds and you tell us who you are. Are you ready?
Sure.
Here we go.
I am from Texas, which is where I'm quarantined now. I started my career in entertainment journalism, where I worked for companies like BET and Essence Magazine and the YBF. And I shortly after leaving, after moving to New York, I moved to LA, where I started writing talk shows. And that's how I got my start in television. I wrote for shows, BET Awards After Show, 3 years in a row, a show called State of the Culture on Revolt, Power Confidential, show that comes on right after Power on Stars, and Netflix Rhythm and Flow. The list goes on. And now I'm working on a secret project, another big show on Amazon. They're looking at writing or producing an after show. But you know, was in the after show game for a while. I actually became the go-to for after shows, but now I'm staffed as a writer on Disney, which I'm super excited about. So, oh, my time's up.
That's all right. Being staffed for Disney is a great place to end.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Last but not least, Jeffrey Reddick, please come into the room. Awesome. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you all?
Good, good. You ready to give us who you are in 60 seconds?
Yes.
All right. Away we go.
I am from Eastern Kentucky, so I like to call myself a hillbilly in Hollywood because I kept on to my good old Southern roots. I started off in the film industry as an intern at New Line Cinema when I was 19 years old. I actually moved to New York to be an actor, but diversity in casting wasn't a thing back in the 90s. So they were like, well, you can't rap or play basketball, so we don't know what to do with you. So I'm like, screw it, I'll start writing. And so I sold my first project to New Line Cinema, which was a Final Destination franchise. And since then, I've worked mainly in the horror genre, working on several projects that include diversity, like a African-American centric slasher film, which I think we need more of. And I've segued into TV writing. I'm working on 2 shows for Netflix right now. And I directed my first feature, Don't Look Back, with a lovely African-American lead that'll be coming out at the end of this year. So it's been exciting times.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Okay. Well, let's get into it. Someday we may be lucky enough to get meetings where producers and executives just want to meet with us so we can spitball ideas for shows. But our conversation today is going to center around showcasing a screenplay that you've completed and want to get produced. Everybody has to start somewhere. So let's start at the very beginning. Jeffrey, you've got a nice long, history and worked your way up through this. Can you tell us about how did you get your very first pitch?
My very first pitch came after Final Destination, actually. I didn't actually work with the studio, so I didn't have to pitch the project, but I still had to put a very detailed treatment together, and I had to go outside the studio to get producers on before I brought it back in, because I kind of knew how the game was played. And we had a hard time with Final Destination because they couldn't wrap their head around a movie where you couldn't see death. And we finally threatened to take it to another studio, and then they bought it. So there was a little bit of stuff like that. But yeah, after that movie came out and was a success, then I started getting pitch meetings at other studios and for other projects.
Nice.
So it's kind of the chicken or the egg first. It's like, okay, I had to have a successful film to start pitching stuff.
Yeah. Did any of you guys have a good like first pitch story? Like, I would go for it, Amani.
So I'm in a similar boat, I guess, with Jeffrey. I was selling pilot scripts actually before I even got into pitching. And so I had sold a script to Nickelodeon, Stars, Freeform when it was ABC Family. And but the first show that I ever got made was Rebel, which was executive produced by the late John Singleton. And so that was the first show that actually that I wrote that actually got produced. And then after that, I got into the pitching game. Like, I always didn't want to pitch a mic, let my work speak for itself. And so I shied away from pitching. And then to sell more shows, I'm like, okay, I knew that I couldn't put it off any longer. And so that's when I started pitching, after I got something produced.
Let me ask you something. And now there might be some extra history beyond just Rebel being first coming onto the air for you, Amani. But when I looked at it, I was, trying to get to know all of you guys online. It looks to me like you maybe made a short of Rebel, and then did that transition, or? So
no, actually that was it wasn't an after show, it was a web series. So it was a web series to actually promote the series. And so that's what that is on IMDb. So, but I guess you can say the first thing that I ever sold, I guess you can say, was an elevator pitch. I wrote a screenplay, and I literally saw Tyra Banks walking down the street, and I chased her down, elevator pitched her, and she bought it. Like, she used her own money from her own pocket to option the script. We developed it, and she has her hand in many pots. She was in America's Next Top Model. And so I then took it, the option expired, we renewed the option expired again. And so I took it and I turned it into a television show and sold it. So,
wow.
But I already had the script, so I didn't have to make the rounds pitching it because I already had the script.
Nice. Sunny, did you, now you've got a pretty good pedigree with a lot of shows that you've been on, like working your way up through from Sunny to Silicon Valley and everything else. Like when you're going out and pitching, like, if you go back to that first pitch, and I kind of asked this question because I remember my first pitch, and I was basically an emotional wreck. Can you kind of walk through what that first time when someone's like, okay, you've got a thing, go and pitch it. What was that like for you? And did you do, like, I guess, what was the emotional expectation versus the actuality of pitching?
Oh, sure. That's a great question. I think very early on in my career, what tends to happen is for some of your earlier pitches, you couple with someone that's a bigger name. And so I think my very first pitch was with this director, Luke Greenfield. Feels like a million years ago, but he did this movie Girl Next Door that was really popular back then, and so we coupled with him, and so that definitely helps, is to have someone who people already know, who's been doing it for a while, sort of leading the charge. And so then in the room, he definitely like led things. He prepared visual materials. He's also a director. So that helped to just have someone there to just ask, what am I supposed to, what do I do with my hands? And, things like that. And it definitely was nervous for sure. I think in your mind, you expect to like have people laughing all the time at your jokes and things. And, reality is often it's a very cold room, and it's just a lot of, it's like just blank faces staring back at you, and you're like, oh, that went horribly, and then suddenly they're like, oh, they're gonna buy it, you know. So it's and then some people who seem to love it, and you're like, oh, that's a for sure thing, you know. We don't hear from them at all. And so yeah, it's definitely odd the first time, kind of getting used to the room, the crowd, the people, and just even the act of like little things like, you know, who says what when, not interrupting, things like that. But after a while, you know, it definitely, there's I think there is a craft to it, and you get used to it, and you get to know the people that you're pitching to, and so it does get easier every time.
Nice. I had this question for later, but you kind of touched on it. So just as like a follow up, so you got to go in with the director on this. What was the background of what you guys were pitching? Was this something that you had already written and he was attached to, or was this something that like you were brought on to creatively to be a writer for?
I think, I mean, that particular one, I think it was our idea. I'd have to go revisit, but what had happened was, you know, back then I had a writing partner, and our first show was Always Sunny, and that did help. You know, Always Sunny, this was season 4, it was already kind of popular. And so a lot of people, you go on a lot of general meetings when you staff on a show of that pedigree, and you know, and you go on these generals, people like you and often say like, yeah, let's like keep talking, and it, you know, doesn't really amount to anything. But Luke in particular really wanted to find something with us, and you know, the only experience we really knew how to talk about back then was being really broke in New York, which is not a novel idea by any means. And so literally that's like everyone's idea. But we just kind of were talking about anecdotes, and Luke had a lot of anecdotes for when he was really broke, and they just kind of organically turned into a story that he was really excited about. And so you know, he asked us to write up a little something, and then that kind of turned into a pitch, and next thing you know, we were pitching to broadcast networks back then.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it definitely differs for each scenario. You know, there have been ones that I am brought on board with, like this one I'm doing right now at FX with Hero Murai and Lakeith Stanfield. That was actually, this musician had written an album. He's a Chicago artist, and he had written a concept album that had all these visuals and stories attached to it, but he's never written anything before, but he's clearly just talented for days. And they sold the pitch to FX, but they're finding that, you know, there's just a lot of stuff that needed a little bit of guidance from a writer. And so my role in that is just helping this really talented musician kind of craft the stories that you want to tell, and just, you know, guide them the best I can. And that's something that wasn't me at all. I'm just kind of there helping.
Yeah.
So it definitely differs.
Yeah. Kourtney, maybe for the sake of the audience, or for people that don't know, just briefly to take a step back, can you just kind of describe like what is a pitch? Like when we're talking about going into pitching, what are people being prepared for? Like, what are they bringing to the table?
So I would like to say this because Sunny brought up general meetings, and one of the mistakes that I made was I would turn general meetings into pitch meetings myself. And that is one of the biggest mistakes a writer can make, because sometimes or oftentimes, you know, generals are for you to introduce yourself and get to know, you know, one another. And if they ask, you know, oh yeah, we actually read your script, can you tell us a little bit more about it? Then that's your opportunity to soft pitch them. But just to go full force, I've done that before. And, you know, and I've also learned how to read a room and read when someone's like, okay, girl, we wasn't asking for all of that. So, and that has happened quite a few times. So now I'm actually, when I take a general, I know, you know, what I should say, what I should not say. But, you know, when you're pitching, And, you know, when I actually got it right, it's knowing your characters in and out. You know, you'd be surprised. Some of these, you know, production companies and these development execs, you know, they will have the strangest question, like, "Oh, your lead, what college did you go to?" When it's like, really? You know, so they'll ask those like really meticulous, like detailed questions. So it's, you wrote the script, so you know your characters, but just know, like, when you walk in that door and you're about to pitch, that any question they may have about that script, you have the answer to. And I mentioned reading a room, knowing when to shut up, because that has happened to me where, you know, you get so nervous and you start to ramble like I am doing now. And all of a sudden you're just talking and they're just like, and then you, this is the ultimate test, when they pull out their phone or when they start looking elsewhere and they're not looking at you anymore. It's like, okay, yeah, let me wrap this up. You know, that Oscar music, that wrap up music starts going on in your head. But also too, you know, I think it helps to set the tone when you're pitching, is having that X meets Y already in your head, because, you know, these producers, they want to know, like, what is this? You know, is this Blackish meets Power? What is this? True Detective meets Get Out? Like, let me know what you're selling me first. So that's one of the key rules I've always, you know, anytime I go into a pitch meeting, I just need to know the look, the tone, the feel of my script. Who do I see playing lead? You know, and being able to get all the important details about my pilot, like, out, like, within the first 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Because people get bored.
Fair enough. Quick. Well, and to that, average length of a pitch, anybody?
Well, pitch is a performance. I think that's the first and foremost thing that we need to understand what a pitch is. And so, you know, as a writer, we write in solitude. And but when it's time to pitch, it's time to perform. And so I think it was Kenneth Burke, the dramatist, who said we wear many roles throughout the day. You know, you're a child, you're a student at school, but when you come home, you play a very different role. You're a child. As a writer, we're writers at home or in our space, wherever we write, but when we go in the rooms to pitch, we're a performer. And so what you're doing is you're taking those words and you're bringing those words to life, because as Kourtney said, you are, you're selling. You are now a salesperson. And so I keep my pitches no longer than 20 minutes, because executives' attention spans are very small. And so you're pitching and they've got a pitch meeting 15 minutes after you and 15 minutes after that. And so you have to you have to grab their attention right off the bat, and know your story, know your characters. Most importantly, it's knowing your story and trying to get them on board to buy into what you're selling, to buy into that story, because they're the ones who's financing that story. They're spending millions of dollars on your television show or your movie. And so you have to come in prepared to answer questions, because you can nail the pitch, but there may be questions that you have to be prepared to follow up after, things that you may not have thought about. And so it's knowing your story. If it's a television show, it's like knowing what's going to happen in 5 years. Like, you know, you're telling me the story now, but okay, where are we going in 5 years? What's the story arc, the character arc? And so, yeah, that's what it is for me. It's keeping it 20 minutes, because like Kourtney said, minute 21, they're looking around, they're looking at their phones, they're done. You've lost the room at that point.
Thank you. Really quick, I want to say, if anybody's watching live on YouTube right now, in about 15 minutes, we're going to open it up to audience questions. So go ahead and use the comment section to put your questions in there, and I will ask your questions to the panel. Jeffrey, what do you bring to a pitch? Do you, thoughts on leave behinds? Do you bring note cards? Do you bring any sort of visuals, like a digital slideshows or anything like that, to add to the words that you're going to be using to sell your story?
Yeah, I think pitching is very personal, and you'll hear different advice from different people, because I've been in pitch rooms where the writer will be on the table acting out scenes and stuff, and that's just not me. Like, so I think you put yourself into your writing, and what I do bring into the room is I bring like my outline into the room, but I never look at it. But it's for me, it's like a safety net. It's leave behinds I think can be okay. The only issue with leave behinds is you can win over everybody in the room. And if you leave something behind that they start circulating to 20 other people, those 20 other people start picking it apart. And then they'll call up and say, oh, this isn't for us. So I actually don't think leave behinds are a good idea. And I think you have to rely on your story to hook them and your characters. So if you come in with too many like side things to show them, it feels like you're trying too hard, like you don't believe enough in your story. Because also part of the pitch performance is you're wanting them to connect with you, because they want to know that you're somebody that they want to be in business with. If you may have a great story, but if you're a total batshit crazy person that they don't want to be in business with, they're not going to like that. So, it's definitely like kind of warming up the room. Hopefully they usually do ask questions after, and they don't usually throw curveballs at you. I've been in some pitch meetings where they never looked at me once I sat down. They just sat there looking at their notepads, which was horrible because they never looked up one time. But you're selling yourself as well as the project. So I think being self, but just bringing your excitement and passion and laying out the story in a way that gets them as excited as you are about it is how you want to leave the room. You want them excited and asking questions.
So Sunny, It's Sunny in Always Sunny in Philadelphia started off with, if I remember the story lore, there was sort of like a not a web series, but like a short film. It was done super lo-fi, which is something that they're bringing to the room to launch a series. But also, you have a show. I don't know if it's come out yet on Netflix. That's all animated, right? So. Are you bringing visual, like, are there visual components, or is everybody, like, when you're coming in, are you just saying like, here's the tone, here are the jokes, things like that, and we'll figure out, lookbooks or things like that, or what things are going to look like, but that all comes later?
Oh, I personally, I think Jeffrey made a really great point that, your pitch is an extension of who you are. And I think in my early career, when I was really just kind of mimicking what other people, comedy writers did, I sort of just, did the usual, like, kind of like outline and lot of jokes. I feel like a lot of people try to cram in probably too many jokes. And it wasn't until I kind of re-examined what I wanted to write about and who I wanted to be as a human that also my pitching changed. And since then, all my pitches are probably a little bit overdone. I almost like to prepare like a TED Talk with like a PowerPoint, and they actually go a little long. They're probably like 45 minutes. I think when I sold my show Singularity with Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, like that pitch was like an hour long, but it was very, very like I Photoshop storyboards. Like I sometimes even create like mini trailers, whatever I can to help, as my ideas get a little weirder, help the executives not have to imagine it in their own heads, but just see it in front of them almost fully formed, has gone a long way for me personally. On the animation space, right now I'm doing one with A24 that we're about to take out, and there's this artist, Lauren Tsai, that I love her work. And so we reached out to her, and now she's actually, we've commissioned a couple sketches. Same with the FX one, with Hero, we commissioned artists to do some sketches. They may not be the final thing that we're married to, but it certainly helps, especially explaining some kind of weirder ideas.
Yeah. Let's see. As far as, so I mean, one takeaway that I might be able to sum up with that is that I would say this, that Sunny, you've got a wealth of experience. So when you're walking into the room, you might get a little bit more leniency for 45 minutes. Is that right for me to assume, versus somebody who's newer in the room, like to be able to do that?
I think it depends on what you're presenting. I think some of the stuff I've presented that's long probably didn't get a lot, so things that didn't go well are because I didn't do a good job, as entertaining of a job. But I think even someone who's new to this, if their pitch is like really entertaining and you're like mesmerized the whole time, sometimes that 45 minutes flies by. I think it's a lot of just practicing and getting other people's opinions. you know, and all these things, you usually have a producer with you. You know, some people will tell me, yeah, that's too long, you should cut it, and I'll try to cut it down. But other times, people have been like, no, like I thoroughly enjoyed the whole thing, just keep it as is. And so I think if a new writer with a kind of bigger producer went in and did a 45-minute like visual presentation, and it like was this like nonstop goodness, that's great. You know, I don't think it's necessarily a you know, seniority thing or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just to
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I also think it would have to do with what you're pitching. Like if I'm pitching like a haunted house movie or a slasher movie, then that's one thing. But if you're creating a whole new world like Avatar, you know, you may want to bring in stuff. But a lot of times the directors will kind of do that stuff too, or if a producer's attached and has a writer with them, they're trying to pitch the whole picture. Whereas when you're going in as a writer, you're trying to pitch the script to an executive to buy. So I think it depends on what kind of where you're at too, and who you're pitching for.
Amani, you made a really good distinction earlier of we write in solitary and we have to perform when we go in and pitch. So with that, when you're going and pitching, like, do you script your pitch? Is it like pre-written?
It is pre-written, but I don't read off my notes. I have my note cards, it's a safety net, but I don't read off of them at all. So I memorize everything. So it's like 20 minutes or so of what I've written, but I do write it first. I memorize it, I perform it at home so I can get ready for the room, but I don't read it off the cards at all.
Okay. Kourtney, but we have to know obviously the story, the script, our plot, the characters, and all these sorts of things. But do you prepare anything else when you go into pitch, like personally, like so you have your story and hopefully you know it inside out, you know what college all your characters went to and all that sort of stuff. But like, do you have stories at the ready for like why this means something to you or your personal connection? What other things do you prepare besides what's on the paper?
Depending on the network that I'm pitching to, I study, their programming. I also try to dig for as much research as just possible, trying to see like what their mandate is. And I was going to say this earlier, sometimes you may go into a pitch meeting and in the back of their heads, they think that your pitch is one way, they're expecting something different and you come in passionate and you're pitching, but it's something not what they expected. So it's not that your project isn't great. It's just, it doesn't fit their current mandate. And that has happened to me before too. And it's easy for self-doubt to creep in because you're like, oh, they didn't like it. And that's not the case. It just didn't work out for them. And that wasn't the right partnership. But in terms of, just preparation, I remember I sold a movie to TV One, Dear Santa, I Need a Date. It's a feature. It premiered last December. And I remember like going in and pitching to them and, I had even the characters in mind, like who I would want to play the leads. As a writer, sometimes you don't have that that option, especially as a new writer. You can't walk in demanding and saying, well, this is who I see. This is, but painting the picture for them, it helps. And obviously going through some of your beats, like very quickly, I do memorize my note cards just so I can talk faster because you do lose their attention, but and also some visuals do work. So I've even with that particular project, I did bring a few visuals so they can just see like what that beginning, middle, and end looks like.
You brought up a good point that, I mean, often when you guys got to go out and pitch stuff, there's going to be a big difference whether you're, pitching ABC, Netflix, or TNT or BET or whoever, but it's all the same project. So do you craft different pitches depending on who you're going to, or do you just sort of like tweak the day before you go in?
I sold a pitch last year to a network and I did have visuals. like a trailer, just so they can get visually what the world that I'm pitching looks like. I don't tailor it per network, but I will take questions, or I will take, like if they ask me a question that I haven't thought of, then I might make adjustments to the pitch after reading the room, like, oh, maybe I can do this, I can explain this better, I can talk about this character more, but I don't have a different pitch for different networks.
I've had a go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say really quickly, the only time that I've like adjusted or revised something was pitching to Disney versus Freeform, because Freeform you have a lot more freedom to curse and to be a little bit more vulgar, you know, in a very teenage way. But with Disney, it's definitely rated G and very clean cut and cookie cutter. So yes, you know, that's how I tailor my pitches. If it's, you know, and if it's in that light, you know, where you're pitching to two different networks and, you know, one's a little bit more clean than the other one.
Okay. Jeffrey, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, like I usually because your agent or manager will kind of set up pitches, so they kind of, the people know kind of what you're bringing in there. But I know that I had a pitch one time with Gale and Hurd, and we had like 6 different places to pitch it, and all their mandates were different. It was like, well, we're looking for like, you know, an older lead in her 50s and a younger guy in his 20s. And then the other one's like, we're more family. So we had a version of the pitch where the leads were brother and sister, where they were mother and son, where they were father and daughter. Like, so, but it was the same story. But yeah, we kind of had to do that for that particular project, because it was like, well, this is what they're looking for, so let's tweak it.
Yeah.
That can be a little frazzling.
Yeah.
This might be more of like sort of an advanced question, but in doing my research about this topic, you know, there seem to be sort of 2 schools of thought when you go in and pitch that, and I think sort of, Amani, you kind of already touched on this a little bit, that, you know, we're going in and we're selling the script, or we're selling the pilot, or we're selling the idea. But so you go in as a salesman, or do you go in as an artist, as a writer, and try and sell yourself? Because if you go in and you're just trying to sell the product, you're more of a pitch man, even though we're pitching, versus trying to sell yourself. You might leave yourself open for an opportunity of them saying like, oh, we don't necessarily like this production or this script, but we like you. Right. So I know that might be a little, you know, advanced ball for people to play that are just trying to get into the room and make their first pitch ever. But what are your guys' thoughts on that? On, you know, do you just really try to focus hard on the work that you've done? Or do you maybe put a little bit more attention into, hey, this is me, I'm cool?
Well, I think that, you know, as Jeffrey said, you're also selling yourself. And so you can have a fantastic pitch, but you also have to be likable also. Like, they want to know, can we work with you? Who are you? So when you get into your pitch, you should talk about who you are. Like, before you get into the pitch, you have an opportunity to let the executives get to know who you are. And so I think when you're pitching, because our stories are so personal, it should be able to come out in what you're pitching. You're not a robot. We're not mechanical people. So, you know, your blood, your sweat, and your tears, that's what they're buying. Like, they're buying your story, but they're also, you know, who are you? We like you. And even, as you said, if they don't buy it, there can be something for you later down the line. Oh, I thought about you. I really like this person. I like, you know, maybe we didn't like, but not necessarily like, it wasn't for us at this time, but it was something about this writer that we like. And so that's how you build your relationships, because they may or may not buy from you, but you still want to have that connection so that you can come back later on with something else and something different. So it's being in a room, whether you sell your pitches or not, it's a great opportunity to build your relationships, because that's what we need first and foremost, our relationships in this industry.
You don't get anything made by yourself.
You don't get anything made by yourself at all.
Yeah. Sunny, usually after a pitch, there's a Q&A section, and a lot of times they dig in deeper about, like, asking you things about the story that you're pitching or whatever. I heard someone say that you should keep as a tactic that you deliberately leave some things out of your story so the execs have things to ask later. Is that just a really Machiavellian concept, or is that something where people are like, I do kind of skim this character detail or that, so they can come back and ask me stuff later, and the people in the suits can feel smart?
I personally, I personally don't do that. But I mean, I do that. Wait, I mean, I don't know if I should say this out loud.
I might have hit a little too close to home there.
I mean, one can do that for like drafts, like early drafts. Sometimes like one will leave things in there because it'll get cut, and it's just something that they can cut. But I don't know, for pitches, I definitely don't, because I find that I don't know, a lot of the questions I know they're going to ask, I'm thinking about when I'm crafting the pitch, and so it's usually in there. But I think kind of I do the opposite, where I intentionally leave stuff out that I know may lead to questions, because a lot of this is kind of like playing a video game where there's different levels. And so your earlier question about artists versus the selling, as an artist, it's really hard because you want to just like pour your heart into this thing and express yourself fully and get someone to understand it and be like, hey, we're going to do this together. But that's not the first level. The first level is like just to get past this boss that's like buying this thing. And then even after that level, there's so many levels of those early drafts. It's just trying to get whoever's covering your project to understand it and go tell it to other people in a staff meeting on a Thursday. And so there's all these levels and different bosses, and sometimes we as writers just focus on the final boss, and we just want to like cram that through. And so in the pitch, I'll actually leave out a lot of stuff that to me is like really important, and I like want to talk about it, but I know it'll just open itself up to a lot of questions, or it'll be really hard to explain. And so I just try to like constantly, and I'm really bad at it, but like I try to like tell myself, okay, what is the final boss isn't here yet. What do I have to accomplish here in like the most efficient way possible, and try to get rid of stuff so questions don't happen.
Is there anything in particular that you focus in on? Is it like, things like wardrobe detail, or like you just never bring up budget or theories or things like, or is it, specific dialogue? What are the sort of the things that you purposefully keep out because like that's the stuff that really the only final boss is going to care about?
I mean, a lot of the stuff I end up having to cut out is like my intentions behind the story, or like the themes, or like the world building. I think a lot of times I personally get lost in the world building, and there's all these like cool, fun details about in like For Singularity, about like, it was a sci-fi comedy, so there was just like a million things that I wanted to talk about, and stuff I researched and that I was making a comedic take on, but it really had no relevance to like the core emotional story, and it was just like needlessly taking up minutes of this pitch. So I think it's just like trying to remove stuff that isn't pertaining to because like Amani said, you're telling that this is a performance, and you need to take them from point A to point B emotionally, and usually that emotion is being catapulted through by whatever the main story engine or the main heart of your pitch is. And sometimes when you go on these left and right tangents, it'll take away from that emotion. So whatever it is, whether it be a wardrobe thing or a set piece that you think is so funny, whatever it is that might be detracting from the overall mood of the experience, sometimes, if not you, a producer should be pushing you to re-examine.
Nice. Okay, I've got a couple more questions here that I'm going to try and burn through, and then we'll get to a couple audience questions. Really quick, time of day for you to try and schedule your pitch. Do you guys prefer morning meetings or afternoon? Which ones have sold more scripts for you?
I think we all try to avoid the like before and after meetings, because by the time they're out, that they're just burned out, they're ready to go home.
Yeah.
I think what Amani said earlier is like, because you have to remember a lot of these people are hearing like 5 or 6 pitches a day, so it's kind of like going in there, cutting yourself, setting yourself out from all the other people they're meeting, and letting them remember you. So I think I like earlier or right after lunch is my favorite time.
I like right after lunch.
I like right after lunch too. I'm too nervous in the morning, so I need to get that nervous energy out. I'm always nervous before a pitch. So
And
I
they
just
need their coffee. I'm like, I need you to drink your coffee first.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. Let's see. As new writers, if you're aspiring to direct or maybe want to act in the project that you're pitching, do you bring that up at the first meeting or at later meetings or never at all?
I mean, obviously, I mean, if we're talking about writers and you want to direct something, I mean, you have to realize, like, if you're going to attach yourself to it as a director and you don't have any directing experience, you're probably not going to set it up, your first project with like a studio or a big production company, because they're not going to want to put money behind somebody that hasn't done anything that they can at least, because everybody's afraid of their job. So they don't want to greenlight a project with a director that hasn't done anything. But even if you've done a short that's won like, a lot of awards, at least that gives them some leverage to say, oh, well, he's won a lot of awards doing shorts like this, so we can let him or her direct this project. But especially as an act, like if you're going in to pitch a project, you're trying to sell the project, and I definitely like, especially if you want to act in it, I don't think you throw that on the table in a pitch meeting. I think you're just putting roadblocks up.
Yeah, I personally know like a lot of actors that are picking up writing because it's like, oh, well, if I'm not getting cast in a thing, then I'm going to write my thing. And so they're out there. One person in particular, she's turning into a fantastic writer, but she wants to act in it too. So I'm wondering like if how that would play out. But yeah. Oh, all right.
As long as you're not going in pitching yourself as the star, like I think get them excited about the script, like let them get to know you. And then you could say, I'd love to play a part in this. But they're going to want, like, depending on who you sell it to, they're going to want at least some visible names to kind of play like the lead characters just for like financial safety.
Totally. You got to recoup. If someone's going to spend millions on you got to be able to help them earn it back. Okay. This is my last question, and it's going to sound like a downer, but I don't mean it to be. What are the odds of a new writer who has a television pilot or a series to pitch? What are the odds of that getting made? Because I know that there's some people right now that are watching this and they're like, I got a great idea for a TV show. Never sold anything, never been in a writer's room, but I want to get this made. What are the odds of that happening?
I think there were two, I forget the name of the show. I think it was on TNT, but it was two guys who worked in like the development office, never written anything or, never produced anything. And they came up with this idea, and now they're now the showrunners, not the showrunners. I'm sorry. They attached an English showrunner to the show, but they're the creators of the show. I forget the name of it. I think it was like the people who the airplane crashed.
It was Wrecked.
Wrecked, right? Yeah, I believe so. But they were two like regular guys who don't write at all. So it could happen.
Yeah, it definitely can happen. But in terms of odds, like if we're just asking odds, the statistically it is. Yeah. But it can't. But that shouldn't just like crush anyone's dreams, because you could be that person.
Totally.
I was that person. So it happens. I was selling scripts and had never been in a writer's room. I had a show that was produced, and I had not been in a writer's room. So the odds are low, but it happens. So I would say be encouraged and be hopeful.
Yeah.
I would say that too, because the thing is that I heard this advice when I was young, that it takes, you have to be willing to dedicate like 10 years of your life to your craft before you make it. And that making it doesn't mean you have like a huge studio hit. That means before you actually start making money.
Right.
And I tell you that is too many people come in thinking, I'm going to give this a shot for a year or two, and if it doesn't work out, I'm leaving. And people that stick with it, my old boss called it cutting through the clutter. There's so much clutter out there that if you're really passionate about this, you never know how your dream's going to happen. You never know how you're going to run into Tyra Banks on the street and chase her ass down. You know what I'm saying? Like,
wonderful callback. Well done, Jeffrey.
She wouldn't have been able to do that if she had not been pursuing her dreams and taking steps towards it. And just like I wanted to be an actor and I got into writing, I'm still working in the business that I love, but I shifted my dream as I was navigating the business, but I always was working towards a purpose. So keep working towards that purpose, and those are the people that end up having success. So that's why I don't think you can quantify it with what the odds are, because you meet a lot of people who come out and just give it a shot for a year or two. But the people who are passionate about it, and this is what you want to do with your life, and this is your plan A, stick with it. You'll find a way to get your stuff done.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on to a couple of audience questions here. Nixon from Facebook. I'm going to throw this one to you, Sonny, because you mentioned having had a writing partner. It says, if you have a writing partner, what's the best way to split up or share the pitch time? Should one person do the talking? And are questions after the pitch, should they be answered as a team, or can the writers have differing opinions?
Well, I don't think you should have differing opinions. You should probably, in the room anyway, you should talk it all out, make sure that you're on the same page. In terms of splitting things up, I think it depends on the team, you know. Some people really want it to be 50-50 and are very kind of almost like mirror images of one another and can handle very different skill sets all together. Other teams are much more complementary, and so one person's kind of the extroverted one and the showman, and then or woman, and handles kind of the flashiness of it, and then the more introverted person will like say 4 sentences, but they're like really impactful sentences, and so it depends on your dynamic, and but I think it's good to talk that all out, what your role is. It's like a relationship. Communication is really key, and a lot of times the partnerships that don't communicate, you'll kind of like assume things, or one person will take too much of a charge, and then resentment builds up. And so it's just kind of talking it all out before you are in front of other people.
Very cool. Thank you. Let's see. Amani, what about, let's see, Megan Clancy wants to know, who do I pitch my script to if I have no connections in Hollywood? Where does Megan start?
Oh, well, wow. Because Megan's not going to see a Tyra Banks walking down the street. I would say maybe try the fellowship programs first. I know there are a lot of writers groups on Facebook that accepts members, and they offer a wealth of resources for someone like Megan. I would say, I don't know if people still do this and send the inquiry letters to agents. Do people still do that? I don't know, but maybe she can get her start that way, looking for representation first, because if she has a manager or an agent, they can help her with that. They have the resources. They have all the tools that she needs to pitch. So my advice to her is to send out letters to agents, send her writing samples, because they'll know, okay, we think you have what it takes, and so let's get you in the rooms to pitch.
Can I add to that?
Please.
There's also festivals that she can pitch to that have like separate like pitch categories. Like for an example, Austin Film Festival, they have, a pitch series where you can literally pitch your idea, and, so I would try to Google that as well, because I've seen people who are just new, fresh writers, never been staffed, never been on a show at all, and they've entered their work into festivals, and now they're represented by an agent, by a manager, and they've moved to LA, and they're in the process of getting staffed. So don't negate those other resources.
Great. Last question, Jeffrey, especially since you're getting to direct your new show's on TV, right?
No, it's going to be coming out at the end of the year.
Okay. So this question is, if you're pitching a TV show, do you bring a show Bible to your pitch, and how many seasons should the Bible be built out to?
I never take a show Bible to the pitch. I mean, usually what happens is they'll want you to pitch the broad strokes of your series, and every series is different. If it's a procedural, then you get the procedural down, and then you give them kind of examples of different cases. how your main characters, how they're going to start and end the season, and kind of what the overall storyline for the first season is. And then I think you also dab your toe into the second season. And they will probably say, how do you see the show ending? Like, or how do you see this show sustaining for like 5, 6 seasons? So it's always good to have an answer for that broad question, but you don't need to have all the specifics figured out, because once a show gets picked up, they're going to hire a writer's room, and the network and the producers are going to start having different ideas about how the show should go. So I don't think you should, I know some friends that have actually written, like, I've written 3 seasons of a show, and I'm like, poor you. Because once it gets picked up, you know, they're going to bring in a writer's room, and they're going to change stuff. So I think just having a clear vision of the characters and the storylines and what the show is and how it's going to end is really important. And giving them like a first, you know, a little detail on the first season, or some detail on the first season and some on the second is good. But then they just ask, well, how would this sustain itself? You know?
Yeah. Awesome.
If I could just go off of that, like, I do think that if you have a very clear vision of what you want the show to be, and it's just like, it's your passion project, sometimes, you know, for myself and other people, like, I know Raphael Bob Waxberg, and when he pitched BoJack, he pitched it like every single episode, like fully beat it out, and it was an extremely long pitch. And Raphael had never sold a show before, and you know, and BoJack lasted, you know, 7 seasons, and that's because I think he was just so passionate about it and had been building for so long and just had it all. But sometimes that can go disastrously, for sure. But I think that's why asking other people, getting other people's opinions, and if other people are like, this is really good, and you might want to pitch all of that because I'm like floored by all of it, then sometimes, you know, you know, buck the tradition of what usually is the path. If what you have is people are saying, like, giving you the feedback that like, oh, this feels different, you know. I wouldn't say that for everyone, but I think sometimes that does bear fruit.
Nice. Thank you. All right. Well, that's it for the audience questions. And for my questions, this is our last segment that I always close with, which is called The Good, the Bad, and the Shameless. I sent these questions to you guys early on. The good is, tell me something that you think is a good learning resource for writers. The bad, what's a common mistake that inexperienced writers can make? So hopefully they'll be able to avoid it. And the shameless, what's the thing that you do to take your mind off of either quarantine or writer's block? So I would like to start. How about with Kourtney? Can you tell me your good, bad, and shameless?
My good, I would say, attend as many panel discussions as you can to learn, to be a sponge and soak in all this knowledge. The WGA, the Writers Guild of America, they have their library open. Well, not now, but utilize that. There are scripts available that you can read, scripts available online, just to, you know, teach yourself and learn more. You're always going to evolve as a writer. I will say the bad, turning in a script too early. You know, always get notes, always have your friends, your colleagues, your mentor, your agent, your manager read the script. I've made that mistake with turning it in too early, and people see typos, or maybe the story doesn't make sense. You always need other eyeballs. And what I've been doing during quarantine is I bought like a nail kit. So now I'm like a nail artist. So if anybody needs their nails done, I've taught myself how to do nails. So yeah, when I need to disconnect from writing, I like do my nails. So yeah.
Nice. Right on. Hey, Jeffrey, how about you? What's your good and bad and shameless?
My good was exactly what Kourtney said. I think the best thing to do if you're a writer is to pick a genre. I do think that that's important. That if you sell a script, like what genre would you like to work in for the next 10 years? Not that you don't want to be diverse and work in different things, but you know, you're also selling yourself. So I think reading scripts that kind of fit into what you do is really important. So you can almost find any script online by typing in the title in PDF. So I think reading scripts and seeing different people's styles and how they do stuff kind of can help you as you're developing your own voice. I think that's good. I think
Nice.
the bad is probably, I see a lot of writers who think their first script is like the best script that will ever hit Hollywood, and they don't want to hear any creative criticism. They don't want to take any notes. And I think all of us probably on this panel, like still when we write our script, we're like, we don't want to show it to anybody. Like those insecurities and fears don't go away. Like that's what keeps us growing as artists, is like constantly questioning, can I do better? Can I do better? So I think the bad is thinking like, okay, this draft that I wrote is like the best thing you're ever going to read. So you can't be bored of it.
Humility.
Humility, but it's also just common sense. You get better at stuff as you do it more. Yeah. So, and I think the ugly, well, I will say one more thing about the bad is you have to not connect your personal value as a writer on what somebody else thinks of your script, because there's are so many times where people are just like, this doesn't fit our mandate. Our mandate changed a week ago. Like we want movies that are all of this. So a lot of people get crushed when they get rejected, and you can't do that. My ugly is really simple. I've been watching all of Law and Order, and I think my neighbor serial killer.
Wow.
Here's that dun dun.
Oh my gosh.
What's he planning? That's been my guilty pleasure through the
I will add to your bad of not linking yourself to stuff is I went out and I pitched my I have a feature that's a high school comedy, and they liked it, and then they came back from it was I think Christmas break, and they said we changed our mandate over the holiday and we're just looking for films that hit a genre of 50-year-olds and up.
Yeah.
And I was like, but in December you loved it, and now you're making movies for 50-year-olds. But it's like you have no control. You have no control. So it doesn't mean the script sucks, just means you have no control. Amani, what about you? What's your good? What's your bad? What's your shameless?
The good is always being a student. You know, you're a writer, but you're always a student too. Just always take that. When I'm watching TV or shows or movies, sometimes just watch from a student perspective. Just how can I watch this show or watch this movie and push myself to be a better writer? I think one good resource is The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogel. I think it really helps writers with their structure. So going into the bad, I'm going to piggyback on what Jeffrey said. People think their first draft is great. They don't want criticism, and criticism isn't to make you work harder. It's to make your script better, because oftentimes first-time writers, their scripts will lack structure, and you can't. If a script doesn't have structure, it becomes very difficult to read. The shameless happy hour is a little bit earlier. It's quarantine happy hour. The hours are a little bit earlier, and I watch Forensic Files, and my husband thinks he has to sleep with one eye open.
Oh boy! Oh boy! A lot of neighbors, a lot of neighbors and spouses worrying for their lives in quarantine.
I like crime shows. What can I say?
Nice. All right, Sonny, take us home. What's your good? What's your bad? What's your shameless?
I think a good resource, this might sound pretentious, but I think the Criterion Collection is like a really good resource, just because for a lot of writers, I didn't go to film school, and I think just anything to kind of get you out of what everyone else is watching, or when everyone's zigging that you zag, and just to kind of open yourself to different types of writing, different types of storytelling. And even though you may not be writing anything like Ingmar Bergman, or like, it's just still nice to just kind of, have a different palette that you're taking in and consuming with your mind. So that's definitely been helpful for me. The bad, I think a common mistake that, I personally made early on, and probably still do a lot, is caring, I think, too much about what a lot of people think about your script. Like, I think sometimes it's easy to get notes from just like too many people. And I think what's better is to like find the people that you really respect, and that you're like, oh, like that's someone like I would love to write like that person, or that person is just always spot on with their notes. Go to them and see what they think. This doesn't mean just find the people that love your work, but find the people that you really respect and take their opinions really, really seriously. think there is a diminishing returns as you get too wide and ask for too much feedback, and then you're just kind of scattered all over and you don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The shameless, I think something fun that I do is I would say like dabble in psychedelics. I don't know.
I've been waiting. I mean, Amani got close with saying happy hour is earlier, but I've just been waiting for somebody to say like, just, going down to the local dispensary and just blowing off steam. Fair enough. Wow, that was great. Man, wow. With that, I want to move on to some thanks, everybody. I want to thank Nick Novicki, Easterseals and the Easterseals Disability Film Challenge. I want to thank Erick Mendoza from Grandview for, bringing Sunny on board. Erwin Moore and Erick Shulman from Moremedavoy Management, Jeff Silverman from The Cartel, Danny Lavey from Brillstein Partners. I want to thank the Writers Guild of America, Deborah Halla and Ellen Rucker from the Media Access Awards. And one little shout out to Black Lives Matter. Look them up, donate. And then I, last but not least, want to thank our panel, Amani Walker, Sung Jin, Kourtney Richard, and Jeffrey Reddick. Thank you guys for being here. This is how you applaud for the deaf community. Everybody watching at home, come back next week. It's going to be the series finale of this whole thing as quarantine is lifting. I got shit to do. So I hope you've gotten something from all of this. So next week is going to be episode 8. It's going to be a special with all Netflix showrunners, Justin Simeon, Linda Yvette Chavez, and Ryan O'Connell. Come back for that. Until then, keep writing. All of you guys, thank you so much for being here. Have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you. It's nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Bye.